here for the December Connect Magazine God at Work interview. We're here with Bob and Kathryn Farmer. Rather than me introduce them, I'm going to allow them to introduce themselves and just give a little bit of background, your history, somewhat briefly, with First Baptist Church, Owensboro.
Well, I was in seminary in 1984, and Dr. David Nelson called me one day and said, would you be at all interested in interviewing for the Minister of Activities position? We have a position open. And I told him I would be more than welcome to talk to him. And at that time, I knew Joe Bob Pierce, who was the youth minister at the time, and I had talked to Joe Bob, and they had just embarked on building the Christian Life Center at the time, and I was pretty excited about that. And so in the conversation I had with Dr. Nelson, that we met with the committee, and after interviewing and after really seeking God's will about the call to ministry here at First Baptist Church, I chose to be here, along with God allowing that to happen. And at that time, I was engaged to Kathryn. We had become engaged in that summer of '84, and so we were getting married December the 1st that year, and so I had about 4 months between the time that I started here at First Baptist Church of Owensboro until the time we were married and she came down. We had about 4 months. That kind of gave me some time. We were in the midst of building the Christian Life Center at the time, and so it gave me some time to get some information and also to kind of look at what we needed to do during the building process. So during that time, we also started the process of building the policies and procedures for the Christian Life Center, try to take care of that before I got married, and then August of '84 is when I came on board here at First Baptist, and I've been here ever since. 30 years.
Kind of give us a little bit of your history here with FBC and coming that December and that time frame.
This is only the second church I've been a member of in my lifetime. I grew up in Louisville and was a member of Walnut Street Baptist, and I knew that Bob was going to need to move after we were married, and we were just, it's all in God's hands, and I was so excited that it was Owensboro because I had been in Owensboro numerous times when I lived in Bowling Green attending school. I was here with some friends, and I knew what a nice community it was. But since we've been here, I've been mostly involved in music. I directed a children's choir. Well, excuse me, I assisted with a children's choir. I won't say I directed. I co-led a women's Bible study that was really a great experience. Department director for single adults. I had to stop and think what it was. And then basically I was real involved and still am to a great extent in the senior adult ministry when Bob took that up, and of course recreation. Been to many camps and cleaned many tables and swept many rugs, but it was worth every minute. And it's we thought we'd only be here about 4 or 5 years. We said, oh, you know, ministers just don't stay that long. God will call us somewhere else. And that was 25 years ago when we said no. 22 years or so ago when I don't know. Anyway, what I'm trying to say is that we did not anticipate being here for this length of time, and we're just so grateful that God has allowed us to serve here for this length of time.
Yeah, you mentioned 1984 and those things. I mean, that for a lot of us, that's a while ago. You've been here a while, and you mentioned not even anticipating being in a place for 30 years. What is that like to be at a place for 30 years in service at one church, one location, when so many ministers and pastors are transitioning from one place to the next, many over a 30-year time may be at 5, 6 different churches. What has it been like for you guys, the experience? How have you seen, in just that aspect, God at work 30 years here for you in life and ministry?
Can we go first?
Sure.
Well, you come to a church like First Baptist Owensboro, and when I came, there were Dr. Nelson had been here 20 plus years, Clarence Nimitz had been here 20 plus years, Grover had been here 20 plus years. So the church has had a very long history of long tenured staff. And so, I looked at that and I thought, there's no way, that's craziness to be in a church that long, because I think sometimes, being in a church for that period of time, people tend to be bored or they want you to move on, I guess. But, we actually I changed my, as God allowed us to be here, we began to develop relationships. You began to seek the will of God in not only relationships that we were developing, but also in what the church was about, its mission, in its purpose. And I quite frankly, because of the relationships that were being built, the foundation part of our relationships, just became such a great place to serve. I could honestly tell you that the church was a very generational church. People here were from generation to generation to generation. I don't think that's true today. I think that part of the church has changed. But it was difficult at the beginning to kind of get to know people. I mean, because they were so attached to their own families and that type of thing. And I look at Kathryn and I think, are we going to ever get close to anybody? And
less of a transplant into the church
right.
type of environment, more of just
to continue
families. Yeah.
But I will tell you, and as I look back, and I can honestly look back now, and I look back at all the relationships that we have built, they're very precious to us. Mm-hmm. They are part of our faith development. Mm-hmm. They helped us grow spiritually, emotionally, mentally. This church just has such a caring side to it, and it's very much, I think it's ministry to people is its caring side, and probably a well-kept secret, so to speak, for us. And we feel so much a part of this. Is home now to us. I mean, it's our home church, so to speak, and we love First Baptist Owensboro. We love the people. We've been honored and privileged to be here.
Very much.
We don't take that for granted at all. It's been a very special place, and it's been a place that's helped us grow. Like I said, help us grow spiritually, and help us grow in our marriage, but in our stature with and understanding who God is. I mean, the church is. I was always told that ministers don't really change the church changes the ministers. And I tend to, after being here for 30 years, I think that there's some truth to that effect. I think the impact of the church that has on the ministers is pretty incredible. And it's all very positive to us. I mean, you always have your things that create problems, but for the most part, church has been very forgiving and been very grace-filled.
How old were you when you got
You
in?
were 29.
29. I can't remember. 29. I was 29, Will.
I was 12.
Lots of growth.
Lots of growth.
During those 30
yeah.
years for you, from just a maturing standpoint, but spiritually as well. And
that's
God
good.
has been at work through the people here to influence you.
Most
absolutely.
definitely.
Yeah, that's good.
I was going to make that point in that, as he said he was 29, I wanted to say I was 12, but I can't. I was 25, and I think the church has basically helped raise us into the adults that we are, because let's face it, now that we look back at the 25 and 29-year-olds that we know, we see how much experience they have yet to learn.
Yeah.
And the church has just been remarkable in teaching us so much wisdom, just from those that have walked the path before us. And it has been spiritual, mentally, just so rewarding to be a part of a church that is so compassionate and so generous, so graceful and so merciful. And you know, it's just a blessing that I don't ever want to take for granted, ever.
I actually was the young whippersnapper on the staff, and now I'm the old man on the staff.
Self-proclaimed.
Yes, old man, and it's definitely it's definitely reversed on me since I've been here.
You've talked a lot in how the church and really how God has used the church in molding and shaping your lives 30 years ago to now. What ways have you seen God at work in the lives of people here at FBC? Your relationships have been deep here, but in just ways that people have been ministered to or lives you've seen changed. You don't have to use names, but just maybe some examples of how you've seen God just literally show off and be at work in people's lives.
I have one,
Yeah.
and I'm going to ask to say it now because I'm afraid if I wait for your answer, I'll forget it. One of the families that we have been very close to for many years, their son at the time was a teenager, and great kid, found himself in a lot of trouble. A lot of it he created for himself. We loved him to death, but we were quite concerned about his future and where he was going to go. When he got to college, it was time to goof off a little bit, but Bob told me one day that he had called Bob and had a conversation with him, and Bob came home and told me that this young man felt called to the ministry. Well, I think I dropped whatever I was holding, and I thought, oh my gosh, what a transformation, because that is not where I saw this person headed, just based on my relationship and watching him grow up over the years. And he is a minister, and he is a very good minister, and he has a great love for the Lord and a great love for ministry, actually. But that's the first thing that popped into my mind.
Well, and I think the work in the recreation ministry, I had the opportunity to involve people to work there just because of the nature of the facility having to be open a long period of time. And so I had the opportunity to have young people work in the Christian Life Center, which was great because it gave me a chance to have a mentor relationship with them. And I can remember one story that we had a young man, one of our families that we became very close to. The son was in the Christian Life Center. He was goofing off, and one night he and another buddy, I think what happened, they were pushing each other, and they pushed him, and he landed against the glass in the front entrance, and he broke the glass. And his dad was not one to have a lot of grace, but at the time, but he was going to have to pay for that glass. I mean, that was the deal. He had to pay for that glass. And so instead of him paying the church, he had to work it off. Mm-hmm. And so he basically started working as a scorekeeper or that type of thing, and we paid him. And that's how he paid off breaking that glass. And, I was pretty worried about him, whether or not where he was going to head in his life. But I can honestly say today that he is very active in the church that he is attending, and he and his wife are very active. He's very active in actually FCA, Young Life, and that to me is exciting to me to see. It's rewarding to see young people that we had some kind of relationship with and influence, that they ended up being where they are today. And I'm just so excited. And just like Kathryn said, we've had opportunities to have mentor relationships. We've seen, I've had opportunities to share Christ with some of these kids, and they've made a profession of faith. by in faith believing that Jesus is their Lord, and we've seen so many differences in people's lives. I mean, I think that's just true for every life. I think there are times that we pray for people and we see the seed being sown. We may not see the harvest, but I think we just have to lean on the Lord. We have to allow God to be God at that time, and there will always be disappointments in ministry, but for the most part, you're just thankful for the things, for the victories that are there, and I'm grateful for that. I would never take that for granted.
Or over 30 years, you've had a blessing to see some things planted and come to fruition with a tenure like that. It comes back to the tenure side of things. A lot of folks that are only there 5 or 6 years don't get to see the back end of the story or the victory end up happening, and that's a blessing, I'm sure, for you guys to get to see that side of it.
I look at some of the adults now that are probably in their early 40s who were teenagers in high school when we came, and now they have their own children who are graduating high school. Wow, it puts everything into perspective. And so it's neat to be involved generationally like that. But one of the other ways we've seen God at work is those that He has allowed us to fellowship with and to come to get to know and who have ministered to us, we have seen them go on home to be with the Lord. And I think back of all those that have passed since we've been here, and it's a tremendous number of people that when we came, some of them were in their 60s. Of course, most of them have passed by now. And then we've seen miracles. We've seen prayers answered and lives for healing. It's just, God's good.
Yeah, that wasn't even an aspect of your tenure that I was thinking about, but you've had the ability to minister. They were very active in the church, and then
they're gone.
They're not able to be that active and to continue to minister to them, and now even some of them gone.
I do think the recreation ministry, and I'm sure you would understand this. I think the recreation ministry allowed those of us that have been in that ministry to really. We had the opportunity to minister to all the different generations, all ages,
different ways,
in different ways, and so that allowed us to get to know a lot of people in the church, the different generations in the church, and they had as much influence on us, probably more influence on us than we did on them, actually.
Most definitely.
And and I think that was a blessing to us. I can remember when we first moved here, there was a group called the Board. That was here, and it was about 4 or 5 older couples,
probably in their late 50s, early 60s.
Early 60s, and they kind of just took us in and included us and adopted us, and some of them have passed away. Some of them are still very active part of the church, but who I have such high respect and admiration for, and for their spiritual side of their lives. I mean, you want to gravitate towards those people. They were such strong spiritual people, warriors.
Well, over 30 years of being in one location and serving, there's got to be some very just memorable moments for you of highlights of ministry that come to mind. Ways that God has worked in just phenomenal ways, or through certain experiences of worship services or trips or something like that. What are some things that come to mind for you, how you've seen the Lord at work, and maybe some very memorable moments over 30 years?
Being very involved in the music ministry, probably one of the most memorable times during my time in the choir has been when we sang in the Easter pageant, to see so many people involved that never really were involved before. They had places of service. Everyone that wanted to do something could, and it was a way to get people to be, well, I guess, just more involved. And I hate using that word over and over again, but that in itself to me was it just really touched my heart. excuse me, it touched my heart that so many people who haven't really found a place of service could find a place of service there.
Yeah.
But I think the thing that, to this day, when I think about it, it still makes me choke up. I remember it was the scene at the very end, and everyone was out bowing down to Christ as Christ was ascending. I'm going to cry telling it. And one lone Roman soldier walks out on stage. He walks up to the ascended Christ. He kneels, and he takes his helmet off, and he lays it down beside him. And he bows in honor to God.
Yeah.
Like I said, it still chokes me up.
Yeah.
But that's just one thing I'll never, ever forget. And then being an angel and having to wear that sheet.
You won't forget that
I won't
either,
forget that either.
Yeah, I wouldn't either.
Bob, memorable things?
Well, I
Yeah,
think there's two things probably memorable to me. I've kind of shared one about the young man that we had an opportunity to mentor, but I think the really probably two things really step out to me, or probably the ordination of one of the men in our church that I had an opportunity to be a part of that ordination service, ordaining him into the gospel ministry. I think the second thing, one of the most memorable experiences in my life here was having the opportunity to go to Malawi on a mission experience, and to be with the 5 men that I felt like were spiritual giants, the ones of us that went, and that was an incredible spiritual journey for me to go and to be a part of that experience. I think the third thing probably for me was this year was being able to go to my grandmother's mission and to be a part of that mission and to see how God used my grandmother to minister to a very low income African-American group of people, and the impact that she had on their lives and the impact that she made in Prentiss, Mississippi.
Who they still talk about today.
Yeah, and who I think that was probably one of the most meaningful experiences I've had since I've been here for me, and it was personal, but it was so meaningful to see her work and that it continues after 60 years, that it's still work and in progress, and how God's used that work. And so those have been probably some of my marks in my life here. There's so many more,
so many.
Obviously.
So
being
many.
here 30 years, that I can't remember all of them, but those are the ones that are meaningful to me.
Knowing the history of the church well, I mean, I don't know if you've memorized your FBC history book or not, but you know a lot of things about the history of the church, and you know very intimately the last 30 years. What excites you about what God is doing at FBC now? We've talked a lot about the past. What excites you about what the Lord is doing and how He's working now? And then what excites you about what the Lord is doing moving forward at FBC? What things come to mind for you when you hear that question?
Okay, I'll go. I think I said in the written article, one of the things that just so excites me is to see the influx of young families that are coming to, first of all, know Christ and bring their family and get them involved in Sunday school, whether it be elementary, middle school, high school age, and even nursery age. It's just so encouraging to know that there is a generation that is committed to being a Christian and raising a Christian family, and committed to being here to serve. Like we said before, time passes, so do people, and the work goes on. And there's so many talented and highly spiritual young people that I don't know, that I hope someday I get the chance to sit down and meet more of them.
You may have to establish the board.
Yeah, we might. We'll be the older ones this time. But it excites me.
That's good.
And gosh, as for the future, a new choir room, I'm excited about that.
Dream.
I know.
We're dreaming. I think the thing that excites me the most about First Baptist Church now is to feel more of the presence of the Lord here in the things that we do in worship.
Yeah,
in worship,
definitely.
in our discipleship, in our fellowship. I think that's exciting to me. It's exciting to see generations coming back to First Baptist Church. That's pretty exciting. Not particularly, family connected, but just different generations that are coming here. And we obviously are a multi-generational church. I mean, there's no question about that. And that's pretty exciting. And I think the future of the church is so bright here. I think our staff is great.
Yeah.
And I mentioned that in the article where I'm grateful to be a part of such a wonderful staff. I mean, it really is meaningful to me, and I may not say it enough to you all, that it's great to have such a great staff to serve with, and we get along great, and so I'm just excited about that. So, I believe God's got His hand here. I'm confident of that. We're a church that's about 180 years old, and we've got a long ways to go, and that means we have to work harder, so to speak. But I think our future is bright ahead of us.
And we're downtown, and not a lot of downtown churches can say that.
Yeah.
I think
that's true.
It takes some effort to get up and come to a church that's not just right around the corner. So that speaks highly of, I think, the leadership of our staff and what they've done and what you all do to work to disciple our members and to educate about our mission and our purpose and our service to God. I think that's been good.
Well, I would speak on behalf of the church saying thank you for 30 years, and probably more than anything, thank you for, I'm thankful to God for working in and through you. Yes, thankful to you, but just thankful for the work of the Lord in your lives and your marriage and your ministry, and just how He is working in and through you. And thanks for 30 years and more to come. And so
it won't be 30 more.
Won't be 30 more?
No.
Won't be 30 more.
No, I've gotten gray hair now, so and no hair.
He
And no hair.
He has the gray hair.
Yeah.
Well, thank you guys so much
Thanks.
for your time. And
Thank you.
Thanks, Wes, for inviting us.
Thank you.